Elliot woke up in a cold, unfamiliar room. His head throbbed with the remnants of whatever had knocked him out. He tried to move, but chains clinked around his wrists, and his ankles were shackled to the floor. The air smelled sterile and metallic, like the inside of a spaceship. There was no natural light here, only the dull glow of harsh artificial lights overhead. His heart raced as panic set in. He wasn't sure how he had ended up here, but one thing was clear. He wasn't on Earth anymore. The last thing he remembered was the explosion. He had been part of a mission, an undercover operation in a distant galaxy. The ship he was on had been attacked, and then nothing. Now he was here in a prison cell with no idea who had taken him or why. The sound of footsteps echoed down the narrow corridor outside the cell. They were deliberate, each step slow and calculated, as if the person walking wanted to make their presence known. Elliot tensed. He wasn't sure what kind of danger he was facing, but he knew that anyone who took him captive wouldn't be friendly. The door to his cell slid open with a mechanical hiss. Elliot's eyes adjusted to the figure standing in the doorway, silhouetted by the harsh light. The figure was tall, impossibly tall, with an air of authority that made him instinctively straighten up despite the chains. His pulse quickened. It wasn't just the height or the presence. It was the eyes. There was something ancient in them, something predatory. A woman, or at least he thought it was a woman. She wore a dark, flowing cloak that shimmered like liquid metal, and her features were sharp, almost otherworldly. Her skin was pale, a near ghostly white, and her hair, long and black as night, fell over her shoulders like a cascade of ink. But it wasn't just her appearance that left him uneasy. There was a chill in the air, a coldness that wrapped around him as she stepped closer. Who are you? Elliot's voice was raspy from disuse, but he forced the words out, his throat dry. The woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stepped into the cell, her heels clicking softly on the cold metal floor. Her eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, Elliot couldn't look away. There was something mesmerizing about her gaze, something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. "My name is Vampira," she said softly, her voice low and smooth, like silk. "And you, human, are mine now." Elliot's mind raced, trying to process her words. "Yours?" he repeated, struggling against the chains. "What do you mean? Where am I? Why am I here?" She tilted her head slightly as if considering him. "You are here because I've been waiting for you," she said, her tone almost wistful. "For centuries I have searched for a being whose blood would resonate with mine. And now I've found you." Elliot blinked, confused. "Blood? What are you talking about? I don't even know where I am, let alone what you're asking about." The woman, Vampira, took a step closer, her presence becoming more overwhelming with each movement. She stopped just in front of him, staring down at him with those piercing eyes. "You'll understand soon enough," she said, her voice carrying an edge of something that sent a shiver down his spine. "You are no ordinary human. Your blood, it is special. And it is why I've kept you alive." A rush of fear surged through Elliot's chest. Special? His blood? He couldn't understand. Nothing about him felt special. He was just a soldier, trained for missions, not for whatever this woman was talking about. "Why me?" he asked, his voice shaking despite his best efforts to remain calm. Vampira reached out, her fingers brushing against his cheek with surprising gentleness. It was a contrast to the coldness that radiated from her, and Elliot flinched at the touch. There was something strange in her eyes, something that made him feel as though she could see right through him. "You're the one," she whispered, as though speaking to herself more than to him. "The one I've been searching for. Your blood makes me tremble." Elliot was at a loss for words. His mind raced with questions, but the one that stood out the most was simple. What did she mean by that? Why did his blood make her tremble? But before he could speak again, she stepped back, her expression shifting. It was as if a veil had descended over her emotions, leaving her distant and unreadable. "You'll learn more soon," Vampira said, her voice colder now. "For now, rest. You will need your strength." And with that, she turned and walked out of the cell, the door sliding shut behind her with another mechanical hiss. Elliot sat there, the silence heavy around him. His thoughts were a blur, questions without answers. The only thing he knew for certain was that he was no longer on his mission, no longer in control of his own fate. He had no idea what this woman wanted with him, but something told him that, whatever it was, it would change everything. But for now, all he could do was wait. He wasn't sure what was coming next, but he knew that it would be a long time before he understood the true power that lay within him. And the fear that Vampira's trembling voice had stirred in him. That fear was only the beginning. Elliot woke up in the same cold, unfamiliar room. The darkness outside his cell was thick, almost suffocating, but the artificial lights above cast a harsh glow that made sleep difficult. His body ached from being in the same position for hours, the chains heavy against his wrists and ankles. It felt as though he hadn't moved in days, though he couldn't be sure. Time seemed to stretch endlessly in this place. The coldness in the air didn't help either. It wasn't just the temperature. There was a kind of chill that seemed to seep into his bones, making him shiver involuntarily. His mind kept returning to the woman, Vampira. What was she? What did she mean when she said his blood made her tremble? He didn't understand. Nothing about his life, nothing about what he had known before, could explain what was happening now. One moment he had been part of a mission. Now he was trapped in a cell on a strange ship, held captive by an alien queen who claimed his blood was special. Elliot closed his eyes, trying to push the fear aside. He had been in tough situations before, dangerous missions, hostile environments, but this was different. This felt wrong. Vampira wasn't just another enemy. There was something personal about the way she looked at him, something that made him feel like a pawn in a game he didn't understand. Suddenly, the door to his cell slid open with a mechanical sound that echoed down the hall. Elliot's heart rate spiked and his eyes snapped open, his body tensing instinctively. It was her again. Vampira. Her silhouette appeared in the doorway, tall and imposing as always. The soft sound of her footsteps was the only thing that filled the silence. She entered the cell slowly, her eyes locking onto him immediately. There was a strange, almost eerie calm about her, like she knew something he didn't, like she knew him in ways he couldn't comprehend. "Did you sleep well?" Vampira asked, her voice light, almost casual, though there was an underlying weight to her words that made Elliot uneasy. He didn't answer immediately. How could he? The question itself was absurd. How could he sleep in a place like this with no idea where he was, why he was here, or what she wanted from him? But even as he stared at her, Elliot couldn't help but notice the way her eyes lingered on him, the way her gaze seemed to pierce through the surface and into something deeper, something hidden. "I didn't exactly get much rest," Elliot replied, his voice dry but steady. "I'm not really used to being locked up like this." Vampira didn't react immediately. Instead, she seemed to consider his words for a moment before speaking again. "You're not like the others," she said softly, almost to herself. Elliot frowned. "What do you mean by that?" Her eyes narrowed slightly as she regarded him. "Your blood. It's different," she said. "I've never encountered anything like it before. And neither have my people. That's why I kept you alive." Elliot swallowed, his mind racing. "What does my blood have to do with anything? What do you want with me?" Vampira took a step closer, and though she moved with slow, deliberate grace, Elliot could feel the weight of her presence pressing in around him. The air grew colder as she approached, a chill that seemed to emanate from her. He tensed, but he didn't look away. He had to know the truth, even if it terrified him. "You don't understand yet, do you?" Vampira asked, her voice soft but filled with an emotion that Elliot couldn't quite place. "You, human, are part of something much larger than you realize. Your blood is not just any blood. It's the key to something I've been searching for.
Searching for? Elliot repeated, the confusion in his voice obvious. What are you talking about? Vampira's eyes locked onto his, and for the first time since he had met her, Elliot saw something shift in her expression. It wasn't just the
coldness that had defined her earlier. There was something else, a flicker of something deeper, something raw. I have lived for centuries, she said quietly, her voice filled with an almost mournful quality. I have ruled over this empire, and I have sought power, control, and understanding, but none of it ever gave me what I truly needed. My people, the ones who came before me, left me with a gift, a curse too, and for all this time, I have been searching for the one who could help me understand it. That's where you come in. Elliot's head swirled with questions, each one more confusing than the last. He tried to make sense of her words, but it was like trying to catch smoke with his bare hands. Why me? I'm just a soldier. I don't have any answers. Vampira stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. You don't realize it yet, but you are tied to something ancient, something that goes beyond anything you've ever known. And it's your blood that holds the answer. Elliot shook his head, frustration rising. I don't get it. I'm just a guy who ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time. I have no special blood. I don't have any answers for you. For a moment, Vampira said nothing. She just stood there studying him with a mixture of curiosity and something else, something far more personal. Then finally she spoke. Perhaps you don't know yet, but you will, she said softly, almost as if speaking to herself. You and I, we are bound together by something I cannot escape. And once you understand that, once you understand what you truly are, you'll understand why your blood makes me tremble. Elliot's heart skipped a beat. Tremble. She had said it. Again. Her blood had trembled at his. He didn't know what it meant, but he knew that whatever was happening was bigger than him. Whatever she was talking about, it was coming, and he wasn't sure he was ready for it. Vampira turned away from him, her cloak flowing behind her like shadows in motion. She paused at the door, her back to him, and then glanced over her shoulder. Rest for now, she said, her voice colder. Now. You will need your strength. We begin the process tomorrow. You will learn the truth soon enough, human. And with that, she was gone. The door slid shut behind her, with a soft hiss, leaving Elliot alone once more in the darkness of his cell. But the darkness wasn't the same anymore. It was filled with questions, questions that burned at the back of his mind, refusing to be ignored. What was this queen talking about? Why did his blood make her tremble? And what kind of power did he really have inside him? He didn't know. But one thing was clear. Whatever came next, it would change everything. The days seemed to blend into one another, each one indistinguishable from the last. Elliot had lost track of time in the cold, sterile cell. Vampira's visits had become routine, each encounter leaving him with more questions than answers. Each time she appeared, it was as if the air itself shifted, as though her presence bent the very reality around her. She came closer each time, her eyes searching his as if she could peel away the layers of his soul and uncover the truth he himself did not know. The strange tremors she had mentioned the first time they met, those moments when her eyes would widen with something resembling fear or perhaps awe, still haunted him. His blood, she had said, was special. But what did that even mean? He had tried to escape, or at least attempt something, but the chains were too tight, the locks too secure. Every time he moved, he felt the eyes of the guards upon him, silent and ever watchful. There was no chance of freeing himself, not while he remained trapped in this place. But it wasn't just the chains that held him there. It was the sense that there was something far larger at play, something he didn't yet understand. One evening, after what seemed like endless hours of restless pacing, the door to his cell slid open once again. Elliot tensed, the same fear rising in his chest. But this time it wasn't just Vampira who entered. Behind her stood a figure taller than any of the guards. His skin was dark, almost obsidian, and his eyes gleamed with an unsettling red glow. The figure moved with a quiet authority,
his presence intimidating and dangerous. Vampira, as usual, was calm, composed, and unbothered by the looming presence of the giant. She stepped aside, allowing the figure to step closer to Elliot. "Who is this?" Elliot asked, his voice steady but filled with suspicion. "This," Vampira replied, "is Valcor, my lieutenant. He's here to ensure that you are kept comfortable." Her lips curled into a faint, almost cruel smile. Elliot glared at Valcor, but the lieutenant didn't respond. He just stood silently, watching, his expression unreadable. Vampira moved closer to Elliot's side, as if intrigued by his confusion. "Do you know why I keep you alive, human?" she asked, her voice low and full of something Elliot couldn't place. "Because you're playing some kind of game with me," he snapped, frustration evident in his tone. "You want something. You think my blood holds some secret. But I'm not the answer you're looking for. I'm not the one you need." Vampira's eyes narrowed, her expression suddenly intense. "You don't understand yet, do you?" she said softly. "Your blood is more important than you think. It's not just the blood of any ordinary human. It's the blood of a royal bloodline." Elliot's confusion deepened, but he refused to let his guard down. "A royal bloodline?" he repeated, his voice incredulous. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but I'm not a prince or some kind of royal. I'm just a soldier." "Not anymore," she said quietly, almost as if she were speaking to herself. "Your ancestors were once kings, rulers of a long-forgotten civilization, a civilization that once crossed paths with mine." Her voice faltered for just a second, the words heavy with some ancient sorrow. Elliot's heart skipped a beat. His mind struggled to comprehend what she was saying. This doesn't make sense. I'm just a soldier. My ancestors were farmers and traders, nothing special." Vampira didn't seem to hear him. Instead, she walked closer to him, her presence suffocating as always. "Your bloodline is the key to an ancient prophecy," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "A prophecy that has been lost for centuries. You are the last descendant of that bloodline, human. You are the last living link to a past that even I cannot fully remember." Elliot shook his head in disbelief. "You're telling me that I'm some kind of ancient royalty? That my blood has some mystical power?" Vampira paused, her eyes locking with his. "Yes," she said quietly. "Your blood holds the key to my power, to the power of my ancestors, and the power that you have that you don't even realize yet is the only thing that can either save us or destroy us." The weight of her words settled on Elliot like a heavy fog. He had no idea what she was talking about, but the conviction in her voice made him question everything he thought he knew about himself. "But what do you need me for?" Elliot asked, his voice small, almost resigned. "Why me? Why my blood?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached out and touched the side of his face with one gloved hand, her fingers cold as ice. For a moment, Elliot felt a shiver race through him, but it wasn't just from the cold. There was something else, something deeper, that made his skin crawl. "Because," Vampira said, her voice softer now, "I need your blood to unlock something that is tied to both of us." She stepped back slightly, her gaze never leaving him. "The ancient curse that runs through my veins is only half of the puzzle. Your blood is the missing piece." Elliot's mind raced. The more she spoke, the less he understood. His thoughts were swirling, a tornado of confusion and fear. "I don't know what you want from me," he said, shaking his head. "I'm not a prince. I'm not some ancient king. I'm just a man who was dragged into this, into whatever this is." Vampira stepped back, a faint smile curling at the corners of her lips. "You will understand soon enough," she said. "You may not believe it now, but I promise you, when the time comes, you'll know exactly what your blood means." Elliot watched her as she turned to leave, her cloak flowing behind her, like a shadow. Valcor followed silently, his heavy footsteps echoing through the hall as the door closed behind them. Elliot was left alone in the dark,
the weight of her words pressing on his chest like an invisible force. What had she meant? Was this all part of some elaborate lie, or was there some truth to what she had said? He didn't know, and worse, he wasn't sure he could trust her. He had seen the power she wielded, the way she made even the strongest of her soldiers bow before her. But this was something different, something beyond anything he could have ever imagined. His blood held the key to something ancient, something connected to her past, to her ancestors, to a prophecy that stretched back centuries. But what did it all mean for him? And what would it mean for the galaxy? For now, he could only wait. Wait for the moment when the truth finally revealed itself. But with every passing minute, he felt more and more certain that whatever was coming, it would change everything. The days continued to blur together as Elliot found himself trapped in a world that seemed both familiar and foreign. Vampira's visits had become more frequent, but every time she spoke to him, it felt like she was revealing only bits and pieces of something much larger than he could comprehend. There were moments when he felt like a puppet in her hands, her words guiding his every move. And then there were moments when something inside him snapped, a burning desire to fight back, to escape, to uncover the truth. But escape was impossible. The walls were thick and the guards were never far. Even if he did manage to break free, he was alone in a foreign ship, a prisoner on a massive vessel that drifted through space, far from anything familiar. And then there was Vampira. Her power was like nothing he had ever encountered. He had seen her in action before, how she could command her soldiers with a glance, how she could make even the most powerful beings bow before her. He couldn't help but wonder, was it his blood that gave her that power? Was it the key to her strength, or was there something more? He wasn't sure. All he knew was that the more time passed, the more the mystery deepened, and the more Vampira seemed to grow, obsessed with him. It had been nearly a week since their last conversation, and Elliot hadn't seen her since. But the silence in the cell was deafening. His mind was alive with questions, but no answers came. He tried to keep himself busy, pacing, thinking, even trying to sleep, though the nightmares kept him awake at night. He would wake with a start, drenched in sweat, his heart pounding in his chest. The dreams were always the same, visions of an ancient world of kings and queens, of bloodlines long forgotten. And through it all, Vampira's face would appear, her eyes burning with an intensity that sent shivers down his spine. He had tried to make sense of it all, but there was no logic to it. Nothing he had learned about the universe had prepared him for this. It was as if he had been pulled into a story that had been written long before he was born, a story that he had no part in, except for his blood. His blood. Elliot couldn't get the thought out of his head. Vampira had said it was special, but why? What made his blood different from any other human? He had no idea. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that he couldn't trust her, at least not entirely. She wanted something from him, that much was clear. But what? And why did it have to be his blood? A soft noise broke him from his thoughts. The door to his cell slid open, and this time, Vampira was standing in the doorway, her presence as commanding as ever. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she stood there, her eyes studying him with a curious intensity. "Are you ready to understand?" she asked finally, her voice calm, almost too calm. Elliot looked at her warily. "Understand what?" "The truth," she said simply, "about who you are and who I am, about what your blood means." Elliot swallowed hard, his pulse quickening. "I don't know if I want to understand," he said, his voice tight. "I don't know if I want to be part of whatever this is." Vampira took a step forward, her long, flowing cloak trailing behind her like a shadow. She didn't seem to hear his words. Instead, she moved toward him with a quiet certainty, as though she knew exactly what needed to happen next. She stopped just in front of him, her eyes never leaving his. "I know this is difficult for you," she said, her voice softer now. "But you must understand. Your blood is the key to everything." "I don't understand," Elliot admitted, his frustration evident. You keep talking about my blood, but what does it mean? Why is it so important? Vampira's gaze softened, but only slightly. Your blood is the last piece of a puzzle that's been locked away for centuries. It's tied to an ancient prophecy, one that speaks of a union between two bloodlines. One human, one alien, a union that will either bring about the downfall of the galaxy or save it. Elliot stared at her, stunned. A prophecy? That's what this is about? She nodded slowly. Yes. The blood that runs through your veins connects you to a royal line, one that once ruled over an ancient empire, an empire that was destroyed long ago. And yet the bloodline has survived, hidden, forgotten until now. Why didn't I know about it? Elliot asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Because you were meant to be hidden, Vampira said. You were meant to remain a secret. If your blood had been discovered too soon, the prophecy would have come to pass, before it was ready. Before it was ready? Elliot echoed, still struggling to process everything she was saying. What do you mean by that? What does this prophecy have to do with me? Vampira took a deep breath, her eyes narrowing slightly as she prepared to speak again. The prophecy speaks of a time when two bloodlines will unite, when the chosen ones will come together and awaken the ancient power that lies dormant in both of them. And you, she said, her voice almost a whisper, are the last of your kind, the last of the human bloodline. And she paused, her gaze intense. I am the last of mine. Elliot felt a chill run through him. Your kind? What are you talking about? What kind of bloodline are you from? I am not just any alien, Vampira said, her voice darkening. I am the last of the vampire queens. My people were once a powerful race, capable of ruling over entire galaxies, but we were betrayed, destroyed by our own. The prophecy speaks of the last of our kind, me, and the last of yours, human. Only together can we awaken the power that has been dormant for so long. Elliot's mind was spinning. He had no idea what to believe anymore. Vampira's words were impossible to ignore, but at the same time, they were hard to accept. How could he, a soldier with no royal bloodline, have any connection to this ancient prophecy? He was just a man, nothing more. Why me? He asked, his voice hoarse. Why is it my blood that's so special? Vampira stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. Because you are the last of your kind, and you are the only one who can unlock the power within me. Together we can change the fate of the galaxy. Together we can bring about a new era. Elliot stared at her, his heart pounding. This wasn't just some battle for survival. This was something much bigger. Something that had been set in motion long before he was born. I don't know if I can do this, he said quietly, his voice filled with doubt. Vampira's eyes softened just for a moment. You don't have to do anything yet, but you will. In time, you will understand why your blood is the key, and when that time comes, you will have a choice to make. Elliot didn't know what to say. He didn't know if he could trust her, or if he even wanted to. But one thing was clear. He was caught in something far bigger than himself, and there was no turning back now. As Vampira turned and left the cell, Elliot stood there, his mind reeling with everything she had said. He had never imagined that his life would take this turn, that he would be caught in a prophecy, with a bloodline tied to ancient alien royalty. And yet, here he was, trapped in a story that had started long before he even knew it existed. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. His blood would decide it. The days had grown longer. The air in the cell felt colder, the silence more suffocating. Elliot's thoughts were consumed by everything Vampira had said. The prophecy, the ancient bloodline, his blood, he couldn't escape it. Every time he closed his eyes, images of forgotten kingdoms and alien landscapes filled his mind. The more he thought about it, the more his sense of self seemed to slip away, replaced by an identity he didn't ask for, one that was thrust upon. Him by fate, or perhaps by something darker. Vampira had told him he was the key. But what did that mean? How could his blood, just blood, hold so much power? What was he supposed to do with it? What was he supposed to do with her? He didn't have answers. All he had were questions. But the longer he stayed on the ship, the more he realized that finding those answers might be the only way he could ever escape. Escape from the cell, from the prophecy, from Vampira. The longer he stayed, the more the lines between truth and illusion blurred. He had never felt so trapped. The door slid open again, breaking the monotony. Elliot's heart thudded in his chest as the familiar presence filled the room. Vampira. This time she was alone. Her eyes, dark and intense, locked onto his the moment she entered. She didn't say anything right away. She just stood there, watching him, her gaze piercing through the layers of doubt and uncertainty that clouded his mind. "Are you ready to make your choice?" she asked after a long pause, her voice calm, almost expectant. Elliot couldn't suppress the shiver that ran down his spine. "What choice?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The choice," Vampira said softly, stepping closer, her cloak flowing behind her like liquid night. "The choice to accept who you are, to accept your bloodline, your role in the prophecy. You are the last of your kind. You are the only one who can unlock the power that has been dormant for so long." Elliot's breath caught in his throat. He didn't want to hear this again. He didn't want to believe it. How could he? He was a soldier, a man who had fought for causes, who had lived and died by orders, not by some destiny written long before he was born. This was too much. It didn't make sense. "I'm not who you think I am," Elliot said, shaking his head. "I don't belong to some royal bloodline. I'm not a part of some prophecy. I'm just a man." Vampira took another step toward him, her eyes never leaving his. "You may not believe it now, but the truth is undeniable. You are a part of this. Your blood runs through the veins of kings and queens, rulers of a forgotten empire. You are not just any human. You are the key." Elliot took a step back, his heart pounding. "You keep saying that," he said, his voice growing more frantic. "But what does it even mean? What do you want from me?" Vampira's gaze softened, just for a moment. She seemed to hesitate, as if choosing her words carefully. "I want you to understand," she said slowly. "I want you to realize that your blood and mine are tied together in ways you cannot yet fathom. Together, we can awaken the ancient power that slumbers within us. Together, we can reshape the fate of the galaxy." "Reshape it?" Elliot echoed. "What are you talking about?" "The galaxy has been torn apart by war, by betrayal, by hatred. But the prophecy speaks of a time when the bloodlines will unite, when the chosen ones will come together and awaken the power that will either destroy everything or heal it." Elliot felt a chill creep up his spine. "Heal it? You're telling me that my blood, that the two of us can fix this?" Vampira nodded. "Yes, but it's not an easy task. This power is dangerous. It is volatile, and it must be used wisely. If we are not careful, it could destroy everything we know. But if we are able to control it, then we can restore balance. We can rebuild what was lost." Elliot stared at her, trying to make sense of everything she was saying. He didn't know what to believe anymore. The world he thought he knew, the world where he was just a soldier, felt like a distant memory now, a life that had never truly belonged to him. Everything had changed when he met Vampira. And yet, despite the chaos and confusion, he couldn't ignore the growing pull inside him, the part of him that wanted to believe her, to believe that there was something more to his life than what he had thought. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. "What do you want me to do?" he asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. Vampira smiled slightly, a hint of something both proud and sad in her expression. "I want you to join me," she said softly. "I want you to accept your role in this prophecy. Together, we can awaken the power that lies within us both. Together, we can fulfill the prophecy and change the future." Elliot felt a rush of emotions flood through him. Fear, confusion, anger, but there was something else too, a strange, unexplainable feeling that settled deep in his chest, a feeling that told him that despite everything he didn't understand, maybe this was the path he was meant to follow. But even as he thought that, doubt crept in. What if he was wrong? What if this was just another manipulation? Vampira had her own agenda. He couldn't forget that. She had been clear from the beginning. His blood was important to her. But was it truly because of some ancient prophecy, or was there something else at play? "I don't know if I can trust you," Elliot said, his voice low. "I don't know if I can trust anything about this. Everything feels wrong." Vampira's expression softened further, though there was still an underlying sadness in her gaze. "I understand your hesitation," she said. "Trust is not something that comes easily, especially in times like these. But you must understand that what we do together will shape the future. The choice is yours, human. You can walk away from this, refuse to accept who you are, refuse to accept your place in this story. But know this, if you choose that path, the galaxy will continue to spiral into chaos. There will be no turning back." Elliot swallowed hard. Her words echoed in his mind over and over again. He didn't want to make this choice, not without knowing the truth, not without knowing who he really was. But every instinct inside him told him that if he walked away now, it would all be over. He couldn't escape what was coming. He couldn't run from the prophecy. For the first time since he had arrived on this ship, Elliot realized that he wasn't just a prisoner. He was part of something much larger than he could have ever imagined. And whether he liked it or not, he was about to become something much more. "I'll do it," he said, the words feeling strange on his tongue. "I'll join you. I'll help you unlock this power." Vampira's eyes shone with something between triumph and relief. "Then we begin." Elliot took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever was coming next. Whatever this prophecy held, whatever fate had in store for him, he had made his choice. There was no turning back now. And with that, the galaxy's future began to shift.